Welcome to Lesson 11 in the Excel for Busy Salespeople course. This is conditional formatting to create red-green reports. So let's jump to the lesson. So first off, let me explain what I mean by a red-green report. Um, Oftentimes we are asked, how is account X doing? Is it up? Is it down? And you're always trying to calculate how are these accounts doing? How are they on a month by month basis? How are they year over year? So I created some conditional formatting to help me very quickly generate the answer to that question. So here's the pivot table that I already had, and I've set up a couple of columns. So first off, I said I want to pull this value. What's the 2017 number? Um, if I just say equals and click on that value, you can see the pivot table says, oh, get pivot data from this line total for the pivot table that's based in A3 for invoice date 2017 for alias Dell Computer Notebooks. Okay, so that gives me that number. Now, if I try to copy that down, notice that every single one tries to give me the answer for alias Dell Computer Notebooks. So what I did instead, undo that, is I said, give me the alias, for the name A6. Now, I could have simply said equals, in this case, E5. E5. Okay? That's going to give me the same answer. But what it won't do is some of these other things that I'm going to point out. So I could certainly just put equals E5. The formula would work. I drag it down and it'll all fill out. So what is the other thing that I changed? I said use the invoice date DA4. So now I could change. So where did DA4 come from? I used 2017. So that's DC2 minus 1. So this may be a little confusing, but if I put here 2017, then here it pulls the data from 2016, compares it to 2017, and since 2017 is a full year, I'll put there were 12 months available, and that shows me how each accounts did 2016 versus 2017. Again, a little formatting convention that I like to use. I like to color code the cells with values that I change. So here I'll put 2018. I only have 4 months worth of data available. So this is some neat little formulas. And again, if I just says equals this cell, what things do I have to change? So here, instead of invoice date 2017, I want the invoice date to be equal to what's in right there. And here, instead of the alias Dell Computer Notebooks, whoops, instead of the alias Dell Computer Notebooks, I want A5. And if you'll remember from our reference lesson back in lesson 02, absolute versus relative, I want to nail down the A because the A is not going to change. So I'm going to put my $sign in there. But I'm not worried about the 5 because I want the 5 to change in every row. So That gives me this formula, and then I can drag it across. And that'll get me exactly what I want. So you can look at those formulas, and again, all that is preparation for, okay, that's a neat trick. Now, how do I know which customers are up and down? So how do I compare 2017 versus 2018? Obviously, if they're both full years, it's pretty straightforward that what I need to do is just calculate the difference. Here, I've got my number for 2017. I've got my number for whatever the number of months was in 2018. So now I'm going to say, here's 2018. I've only got 4 months worth of data. So I'm going to take that number, divide it by the number of months that I have, which in this case is in DC4. Again, absolute versus relative. This number always stays in this location, so I lock down the DC, lock down the 4, and then multiply it times 12. So that's going to give me a, and then here, so this gives me a annualized run rate based on the 4 months worth of data. And then I'm going to go over to here and say, look at this number, last year's number versus this year's number. If it's an error, if it's a divide by 0, then just put a hyphen in there. And I'm going to drag that down. And there is, so like this customer, it went from 2,100 in 2017 to, in the first 4 months of 2018, did $7,000, which puts it on a run rate to do 21,000. So that's 1,000% growth. Here we've got customers. This customer did 24,000 in 2017. In the first quarter, it only did, the first 4 months, it only did $6,000, which puts them on a run rate to do $20,000, which means they are only forecasted to be at 82% of the 2017 number. So again, I've got a nice way to look at it, but now what? So I'm going to highlight this. I'm going to use my conditional formatting, new rule, cells that contain, and I will say, because this is a percentage, cell value is less than or equal, or we'll just say less than 1. And then I want to make my formatting. So fill color, and I will pick a light red and click OK. So now all of the cells that are less than 1 show up as red. And then conditional formatting, new rule, cells that contain, cell value is greater than or equal to 1. Format, and I want that to be a light green. Okay. So there's your red-green report. Everybody that is forecast to be over last year's run rate shows up as green. So here the guys that had no number in 17 but showed up in 18 are also green. Anybody that's below that number is, or has a negative number is going to show up as red. And that is the basics of how to create a red-green report. I hope you find these useful. Come back next time when we will look at highlighting data or finding, I'll say, hidden data within a very large data set.